So I'm going to go ahead and answer Mitra's question. And then, Gavin, I want you to pay attention to the level 2. I want you to grab a hold of words that feel like they stick out, like specific, very hard focus on just like what I'm saying. And then, Mitra, I want you to move to level 3 and describe or pick up on the energy or the atmosphere as I answer your question. What does neutrality offer? Like, what does the space of neutrality offer me? It's like I don't want to be a reactive being. I don't want to be like a dog that, here's another dog barking, and so I got to bark back. It's like, it's a form of slavery. And so I don't want to be a slave. What I want to do is be neutral, which is to be outside of or objective or free from the situation, and then do the thing that's most loving or right, the thing that is that brings everyone up. And that may be to completely block them off or to leave it open. Not really sure entirely yet, but it seems to me that neutrality is not being lost in the maze. It's being above the maze. It's not being, getting tumbled by the water. It's being above it, or people say I'm under the weather. It's like being above the weather. It's the meta view. It's which is always the place of freedom, the place of clarity, and the place of where a person can make a clear decision about absolutely anything. Because one is not the emotions can make things so confusing and so muddled. So neutrality is free, above, and can lead to the response that will be most beneficial for everyone involved. So, Gavin, any specific words?
Oh, quite a few. Obviously, neutrality is the big one, but also objectivity, loving, appraise, something like being above the circumstances, clarity, free.
Yeah,
free,
great.
All around the theme of neutrality. Yeah.
Yes, great. So I want you to, any of those stand out as the most important, or feel like they had primary kind of status or whatever?
Well, this may be me in level 1, but what I was most curious about was this thing about forget how you expressed it, but about being loving or coming from a loving place and making a decision that's best for everyone.
Ding, 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 ding! You won the $10,000.
Can I have that? Then maybe I can start working for a while.
That's my big A. What you're pointing to is my big A. That's what it's all about. Why would I want neutrality? Why would I want to be objective? Why would I want to be free? It's for loving. The things that stuck out to me is loving and free. And loving, for me, of all the things you read, kind of mirrored back to me, was like, wow, yeah, that's what's going on. That's where I want to come from. And the only way to get to loving is through objectivity and through freedom and, blah, blah, blah. So I want you to go ahead and create a question from loving, please. Right on. You guys are so on it.
Okay.
Mitra, you got a question for me in level 3? Or level 3 read? Not a question, but just a read.
Well, I mean, the reads I was getting was just feelings of expansiveness. And again, loving came up for me, and really like this kind of being in the space of a higher perspective, evolved perspective.
Fantastic.
And beautiful.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so expanded, loving, evolved. Those evolved feels like it stood out the most to me. And actually all of them are kind of like wrapped up in each other. So I want both of you, go ahead and create a question from that, Mitra. And I'm going to ask Gavin what his question is. So Gavin, what's your question?
So I had a question until I started listening to Mitra. So let me just go back to it.
Okay.
Obviously not multitask. I thought we had a multitask after a year off with children. It was something like just what's it like to be looking at this from a loving place.
Yeah, that resonates for me tremendously.
I think my first question would have been a bit too presumptive. The first thing that popped into my head is so from this loving place, where do you go now? Which felt a bit like, getting into accountability and that sort of thing. But the more open question just felt like, what's it like to be looking at this from a loving place?
I mean, maybe at the end of the session you could ask that other one. You're like, great, so what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Or where do you go from here? But if you want to deepen it, the other question is the way to deepen it. I just want to point something out really fantastic right now. If you coached like this and allowed yourself to just trust your read and your question and keep expanding, we often don't work this simply. And it's very, very simple. And I just want to encourage you, you've been right on the mark in every one of your cases. And I want you to know that if you trust yourself, if you know what your little A is, and you can just start spelunking, you can start, working in this way, using level 2 or level 3, even level 1, you can keep expanding and expanding, deepen until the person's like totally plugged into these values. Like if I'm plugged into loving, then I'm plugged into my big A, and then you tie it back from where you are now. What do you know about how you want to, we didn't really get the little A, but it's probably something like, what do you want to do about your son hanging out with your mother-in-law, and the potential him seeing, like blah, 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 his grandpa. So I would have a place to tie, you'd have a place to tie me back to and from, like I'd be up in the landscape of, this loving perspective and then tying it back. And then I'd have a bunch of I do have new information about it, Mitra, your question?
The thing that's coming out for me, I don't know if this is a good question, is like, everything you said was just beautiful, and it's just like, what are you evolving towards?
A great question. Such a great fulfillment question. It's like, once again, big A stuff, a future selfie, like who are you becoming kind of quality.
Mm-hmm. I mean, is there any other I'm just curious, what other questions?
I have a messy one, which like, who is that evolved guy, or like, what's the most evolved, or like person like, or who are you when you're evolved, or that kind of thing, or what's important about being evolved, or like, what does evolved get you? This is the great thing, is it doesn't need to be done perfectly, as long as the spirit of the question is in place, and the client will get where you're headed, where you're pointing, and they will go, because they're after their big self as well. They will intuit what you're pointing to and where they're wanting to expand into.